Coming up on Talking Points, a shooting during a traffic stop in Minnesota. Police in a Minneapolis suburb shot and killed a 20-year-old black man yesterday. The shooting has sparked protests, all while former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin's trial over the death of George Floyd enters its third week.
Plus, the plan to replace Interstate I-81 through Syracuse with a community grid gets the green light from Governor Cuomo. We'll explain what that means for city residents next.
And the royal family continues to grieve the loss of its patriarch. Prince Phillip died Friday at 99 years old. The impact of the loss for the family and the country.
Talking Point starts right now.
Police in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota say that the shooting of 20-year-old Dante Wright at a traffic stop yesterday was accidental and that the officer meant to use her taser instead. Good evening, I'm Manny Martinez.
And I'm Anthony Dabbundo. This latest shooting comes almost amidst a growing national spotlight on the area because of the trial of former officer Derek Chauvin for the death of George Floyd, which is taking place just 10 miles from where this latest shooting occurred yesterday. And of course, today we saw that the Twins had their home game against Boston canceled out of respect for the victims and for fear over potential riots and whatnot. Just another situation for Minneapolis. They've had multiple run-ins now going all the way back to Philando Castile back in 2016 as well.
Yeah, it's a city that's on edge at the moment, and there's just so much going on, including increase in protests that we've seen so far. And the President Biden, according to Jen Psaki, his press secretary, will have something to say about the shooting tonight. So we'll wait and see what he has to say. The one thing that I want to point out, too, is that the police in Brooklyn Center have been focused on transparency, and they released the video of the shooting very quickly and didn't sit on it, which also says something as well. Yeah,
definitely something that will be in the national conversation for the next few weeks.
And there is also a curfew, too, that Governor Walz has instituted that will start at 7 local time tonight in 3 specific counties. So now let's shift a little closer to home. New York State's budget for fiscal year 2022 will bring a multitude of changes for state residents. The total cost to New York State taxpayers will be around $222 billion. Here to break it all down is Talking Points analyst Natalie Fahmy.
Thanks, Manny. Now, the budget includes aspects such as homeowners relief. That is $2.4 billion in the bill, as well as worker relief. That's $2.1 billion. It is for workers who are excluded from the one-time unemployment benefits or the stimulus check, so that way they can get a little something from the state as well. The budget plan also includes tax differences for those who are in the top percent in the state, for individual filers who make over $1 million and joint filers who make over $2 million. Their taxes increase almost by 1%, as you can see here, from 8.8% to 9.6%. And it will deliver $440 million in property tax relief for those earning less than $250,000. Their income tax credit will range between $250 and $350. And as gun control continues to be a hot item in Washington, New York State has included it in their budget. They will spend a total of $55 million. You can look at the breakdown right here. $25 million of those dollars will go to Communities Against Hate Crime. That's a program in New York State. And then $15 million will go towards public education and educating those about gun control and safety in those buildings.
Now, you mentioned potential tax increases and gun safety regulations and those proponents. Is there any part of this bill that Governor Cuomo has been against during the negotiations?
Yeah, so he is actually very against the tax increases. He has been speaking out against them for quite some time, as well as this is he proposed 12 separate bills that were struck down in creating this budget. So there are quite a few things that Governor Cuomo is against in this bill.
And how have the recent allegations changed his negotiating position and impacted this budget determinations?
So it really has weakened his ability to make big decisions. As I said, they struck down 12 of his proposed bills already, and there's more that I'll fill you in on later.
Thanks, Natalie, for that. The state budget will also allocate $800 million for the community grid project here in Syracuse. Manny Martinez has more.
Yeah, the project will replace the I-81 viaduct that bisects the city, and here to explain the upcoming construction plan is Talking Points analyst Moriah Humiston. So, Moriah, let's just begin with the fact that this has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of consideration in this. The city has spent a lot of time on this, and they want to get it right. So, how did they settle on the community grid?
So originally back in 2019, the city of Syracuse had two options to go for. The first being the community grid, the second option being very similar to the I-81 viaduct now, where it was going to be a similar raised platform for traffic. Now they went with the community grid because there are issues with I-81 breaking up different parts of the community, and they're hoping that the community grid will be more cost effective and bring the entire city of Syracuse together.
And the first phase of construction, what will that look like? What will it include?
So the community grid for the phase one, which is where the New York State budget money is coming from, that's going to include taking down I-81 and expanding a business loop for I-81, as well as breaking down the different areas on I-90 where Krause and Irving Avenue has I-81 right now. And it will break it down so it will be flat, and it will bring in the north and south sides of the cities for travel.
And it'll take place within many of Syracuse's downtown neighborhoods. And there's always concern for the impacts that that'll have on those neighborhoods. So what are we looking at there? What kind of effects will all of this construction have on that?
Right, so there are two problems right now focusing on the community grid issue. The first is commuters from the suburbs worrying about the traffic patterns that this is going to create with construction. And the second is the public housing that we see on the west side of Syracuse. And we're really going to be seeing what the community grid impact is going to have on the public housing community. Now there is a group, Blueprint 15, and that is going to help bring the community and local businesses that are going to be displaced during construction.
All right, so Moriah Humiston, thank you. Anthony, back to you.
Prospective candidates are laying the groundwork for the 2022 New York gubernatorial race. It's never too soon to talk elections. It seems clear that current Governor Andrew Cuomo will not be resigning. What is less clear is what kind of challenge New York Republicans will mount against the eventual and likely Democratic nominee. Talking Points analyst Michael Furnari is here to tell us who is running and who we might see run against Cuomo. So let's talk GOP. Who are some of the names that are emerging that we're hearing about?
So the first domino to fall here was Lee Zeldin. He's a representative from Long Island. He's the first person who officially is going to be running. Now there's three names that you're going to want to watch here. First one here is Andrew Giuliani, obviously the son of the former mayor of New York City. He's a big name in the state. It's unclear, what kind of political chops he may have against somebody like Cuomo. Another person to watch is Janice Dean, television personality, somebody who was a very vocal activist against Governor Cuomo. And the last name is the biggest one. That's Elise Stefanik, obviously probably the biggest name in the GOP right now in New York State. She released a statement over the last week that seems kind of mum and kind of coy about whether or not she's going to run. It seems like she's likely to dip her toe in the water. Where we may get more clarity about this is the county chairs of the GOP are going to be meeting on April 29th. They're going to be discussing the campaign. We should have a clearer picture around then.
Now, it's been a long time since the GOP's won a governor's election in New York, but Cuomo might face some trouble on the Democratic side. His numbers are down. Who potentially could they run? And I'm guessing it's probably somebody to present more of a challenge than Cynthia Nixon did a few years ago.
Absolutely, it's a really good point. And Governor Cuomo's faced primary challenges every time he's run for re-election. The question is, how competitive is that going to be? Now the numbers are a little bit unclear at the moment. So 55% of people in New York say that Cuomo should not resign. However, the catch is 59% say he should not run for re-election. Now the problem for them is that Governor Cuomo's got $15 million raised already. Now in a governor's race and a statewide race, that's really the big barrier to entry, is the amount of money you can put together. So it seems like he is leaning towards running for re-election. However, the question is, could there be a competitive primary this time? As you said, Cynthia Nixon lost by almost 30 points. He beat Mark Molyneux in the general by more than 20. So the question could be, even if there's a competitive race, it may still be a big win. The candidates to watch in that sense are going to be Jamon Williams and Letitia James, who, it's important to note, is going to be leading the investigation against Cuomo. Could set her up for a good primary.
And time heals all wounds. Potentially could save the governor. He's still got some time to rehab his image if he wants to try to win that re-election next year. And we're going now to Manny, who is with Ben Schiller.
Yes, in Arkansas, a bill is now on the books that bans gender-affirming treatments for transgender minors. Governor Asa Hutchinson, who opposes the new law, said that the state house went a little too far on overriding his veto. Joining us now is Talking Points analyst Benjamin Schiller to discuss the latest developments from this law. And let's just begin straightforward. What kind of judicial pushback has this law faced?
Well, there's been a lot of pushback from both sides of the aisle. But let's talk about the Democrats and many of the adversary groups across Arkansas. The ACLU of Arkansas is heavily against this bill. They put the first lawsuit against this bill in the Arkansas Supreme Court this past Friday. Also, many advocate groups from the LGBTQ plus community are putting up petitions online. Thousands of people from across the United States as well as international waters have signed onto this petition.
And this law will take away some health care access, of course, for some of the transgender youths. But tell us exactly what it limits. Just make it crystal clear for us.
Right, you hit it spot on. There will be tons of complications from the transgender community with getting health care from this bill. So basically this bill, it takes away transgender access, basic health care for people below the age of 18 across Arkansas. This includes gender-confirming surgery, which basically, let's say you're a biological woman, you want to become a man. You can't have that surgery anymore because you're under the age of 18. Also, this blocks medical practitioners from providing hormone therapy and puberty treatment for minors across the state of Arkansas.
And Governor Hutchinson, he's been an outspoken critic of this bill already. And he himself, as long as the state have been, they've faced criticism themselves. So I guess my question is, what kind of backlash are they facing right now? What are they?
Well, there's been tons of backlash, especially from Walmart retail brands. Walmart is based in Arkansas, and they are heavily against this legislation, and they're feeding into Hutchinson's court as well.
All right, thank you, Benjamin Schiller. Coming up after the break, how Democrats in Congress can get President Biden's infrastructure bill passed. Stay with us.
Your girls have been with you through every moment of your life. They were with you when you felt unbreakable. With you that time you felt most alone. And with you when you realized you would never be. They were with you when you shared your love with the world. And with you when she became your world. Your girls have never left you. They're still with you right now. But how well do you know them? You don't know mine. Knowing your breasts can save your life.
Welcome back to Talking Points. With a slim majority in both houses of Congress, Democrats are struggling to get key facets of their agenda through on votes. But budget reconciliation may be the best path forward for the party for passage, especially for President Biden's new infrastructure bill. Joining us now with more is Talking Points analyst Jacob Goldberg.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, reconciliation is going to be a crucial thing for Democrats to try and get this infrastructure bill through. Obviously, it doesn't have so much Republican support, so this is how reconciliation works. Basically, it avoids a filibuster, which instead of a 60-40 vote to pass legislation, only requires a simple majority to pass. And with the way the Senate is right now, Kamala Harris would break that 50-50 tie, giving Democrats the majority, which would be crucial for them to get this bill passed. Also, the Senate can only use reconciliation 3 times a year, and they've already been trying to use it on the COVID relief bill, so they're going to be having to watch out about that. But this is not new. Reconciliation has been used many times before. It's been used in 1980 with major deficit reduction bills, in 1996 with welfare reform, Bush tax cuts, Affordable Care Act, Trump tax cuts. So both Democrats and Republicans have used this to their advantage in the past. So now we go to what the landscape looks like right now for Democrat, Senate, and House. So with the majority House and Senate controlled by Democrats after the 2020 election, reconciliation is a great way for them to get legislation passed quickly. The House right now is controlled comfortably with a double-digit margin from the Democrats, but the Senate is deadlocked at 50, and because of the majority rule, with reconciliation, the tie-breaking vote from Kamala Harris would allow the legislation to pass.
Obviously, all 50 Democrats need to be on board for this to pass through a party line vote. Joe Manchin's the controversial swing vote. What has he said, and when might we see this get through Congress?
Yeah, so Joe Manchin has always been, from the start, hesitant about this reconciliation. He believes that they should wait till they get more Republican support. He doesn't believe they should go in with just 50 votes. He believes there needs to be more bipartisanship between the two parties. He also feels that reconciliation might cut some aspects out of the bill that Democrats might want, such as pro-union laws, because it doesn't have to do necessarily with budgeting. And Republicans feel, on the other hand, they're against this because it will raise the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%, which is obviously going to be huge a huge no-no from the Republicans.
Jacob Goldberg, thank you. Democrats are urging President Biden to consider including a fourth stimulus check or possible monthly payments for the rest of the pandemic. And over the last few weeks, around 156 million stimulus checks have been sent out. So joining us now to talk about the effort to include a fourth round of stimulus checks is Ericka Love. Ericka, what can you tell us about what a fourth round of stimulus checks would look like? What do Democrats have in mind?
Well, currently there isn't an amount on the table because there's no legislation in place. However, Democrats are pushing for a $2,000 monthly payment. And additionally, the IRS has released information about a monthly payment or plus-up payments for those who are eligible that'll be based off of their 2020 tax return.
And so you mentioned the $2,000 monthly recurring payments. That's something that Democrats have been pushing for quite a while, especially since the start of the pandemic, but not something that they have delivered on yet. So what kind of support does this effort have currently?
Well, currently 56 Democratic representatives and 21 Senate members are vying for it. They're voicing their opinion about it. However, the Democrats only have 50 votes in the Senate and need 60 for this legislation to advance.
So tell us, how likely do you think this new effort is to pass through Congress?
Well, it all depends on the infrastructure bill. Since the infrastructure bill will likely go through reconciliation, there will need to be some through that. That's the only chance the Democrats have.
Thank you, Ericka. The federal investigation into Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz continues tonight. Gaetz is accused of having a 17-year-old minor flown across the state, violating state laws for sex and giving drugs to money and women in exchange for sex. With more on this, here's Chilekasi Adele.
Manny, Anthony, good evening. Representative Matt Gaetz is in more hot water over the sex trafficking allegations he faces. We've learned over the past few days that Gaetz's associate, Joel Greenberg, also is under investigation for sex trafficking and is actually expected to plead guilty. Some legal experts have said if Greenberg cooperates with federal prosecutors, it could spell more trouble for Gaetz if, in fact, the allegations are true. Gaetz is still under investigation from the feds, and he's now also being investigated by the bipartisan House Ethics Committee. Now, if he's found guilty of an ethics violation, he could face a censure, a fine, or even be expelled from Congress. Gaetz is also facing backlash after a recent report from CNN saying the congressman was sharing photos of nude women with House colleagues, sometimes even while on the job on the House floor. It was also revealed that Gaetz was denied a meeting with former President Trump down at Mar-a-Lago, so it seems as if the Trump camp is distancing themselves from him for now. Now, Gaetz denies any wrongdoing, and he says that those accusing him of inappropriate conduct are either misinterpreting his personal life or simply making conspiracy theories about him. He spoke Friday at a conservative event in Miami, his first public appearance since the news came out. The denial isn't stopping at least one GOP member from calling for his resignation. You'll remember Illinois' Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He, of course, was one of the only Republicans to support the impeachment of President Trump, and he says now that Gaetz should step down.
And coming up after the break, we take a closer look at the situation around Iran as it negotiates with the United States to re-enter the 2015 nuclear deal. Stay with us.
Four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Iran is at the center of a number of new developments in the Middle East. The country is blaming Israel for sabotage at a nuclear plant near Tehran. Also, the European Union handed down sanctions for human rights violations. All of this as the country negotiates with the United States to reinstate the 2015 nuclear deal. And here to break down all of this on Talking Points is Analyst Teagan Brown. So Teagan, let's just begin with how those negotiations have gone between the United States and Iran.
So those negotiations started last week in Vienna when multiple countries, including US, Iran, Russia, China, and many others, entered into this discussion of the 2015 nuclear agreement. Former President Donald Trump withdrew from this back in 2018, and now we're seeing if both the US and Iran will enter. But there are certain things that have to happen in order for that to happen. For instance, the US needs to roll back their harsh economic sanctions that were put in place during the Trump administration. And in turn, Iran needs to put limits on uranium and centrifuges. And those two things are going to be what depends if both of these re-enter that deal.
Right, and the Israeli government also has a role in this too. How have they responded to these allegations by Iran?
Well, that's the thing. They actually have not responded, and it's unsure if the government will put out a response in turn about this agreement.
All right, Teagan Brown, thank you. Anthony.
And Northern Ireland is experiencing its worst unrest in years. Clashes between loyalist Protestants and Republican Catholics is reminiscent of the violence that took place from the 1960s until 1998. Talking Points analyst Lindsey Fine is here to discuss why we are seeing this unrest now. So Lindsey, before we get into what's happening now, what exactly is the history of violence between the Protestants and the Catholics that's led to this?
So until about 100 years ago, all of Ireland was a part of the UK. And the UK and England is mainly Protestant. However, most of Ireland is mainly Catholic. And then there's a lot of conflict, and the Catholics in Ireland felt really persecuted by the Protestants, and there's a lot of conflict there. And so then 100 years ago, most of Ireland split and became just a Republic of Ireland. However, the 6 most northern counties in Ireland felt a really strong were mainly Protestant, and felt a really strong connection to being part of the UK. So they stayed as members of the UK. And then between 1960s and then 1998, like you mentioned, when the Good Friday Agreement was signed, there was this really violent history in Northern Ireland called the Troubles, which was, again, violence similar to what we're seeing now between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland.
So what's been the reason for the latest spike, the recent uptick in violence?
I mean, Brexit, to put it lightly. Boris Johnson said that he was really finicky with what he said about whether he was going to put borders in terms of trade. He told some people that he was definitely not going to put it along the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and told others that he wouldn't put it in the sea between the island that holds the rest of the UK and the island that holds Ireland and Northern Ireland. And so then he put it in the sea between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. And that really made some loyalists in Northern Ireland really upset because they felt that it was putting another border between them and where they want to be, which is part of the UK. And so just that conflict paired with a really changing dynamic where now Catholics are the majority in Northern Ireland is what's spurring this violence.
Definitely really complicated anytime you're dealing with religion and borders, but what are the long-term implications? Is anything going to change from this?
Yeah, so I think what we see in the 2022 election is going to kind of determine what happens with whether or not Northern Ireland stays as a part of the UK or breaks off and joins the rest of the Republic of Ireland to form one united Ireland. We spoke with Glenn Morgan, a professor here of political science, about his opinions on the issue.
One of the consequences of Brexit could be we see the breakup of the United Kingdom with both Scotland and Northern Ireland, and I would guess eventually Wales, all leaving, and you won't have a United Kingdom.
And coming up after the break, Great Britain mourns the loss of Prince Phillip. We'll talk about the legacy that he left behind on the other side.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
over in my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
The UK is mourning Prince Phillip, who died on Friday at the age of 99. Here with more on his death and his life is Talking Points analyst Spencer Kweskin.
Thanks, guys. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh and husband of Queen Elizabeth II, passed away on Friday, April 9th. Philip Schleswig Holstein Sonneberg Glucksborg was born in Corfu on June 10, 1921. As the only son of Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark and Princess Alice of Battenberg, the great-granddaughter of Queen Victoria, Philip inherited the line of succession to the Greek and Danish thrones. 18 months after Philip was born, his family was exiled from Greece after Greece's loss in the Greco-Turkish War. In 1939, Philip became a cadet in the Royal Navy and served as a midshipman on the HMS Ramillies and on the HMS Valiant. During his service in World War II, Philip moved up the ranks to first lieutenant of the HMS Wallace and later became commander on the HMS Magpie. In 1947, Philip was made Duke of Edinburgh, Earl of Merioneth, and Baron Greenwich by King George VI, and then married Elizabeth II on November 20th, 1947. Their marriage would become the longest of any British monarch. Philip went on to have 4 children: Prince Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward. In April 2009, Philip became the longest-serving British royal consort. In 2017, after 22,219 solo engagements, Prince Philip retired at the age of 96. When he died at the age of 99 last Friday, in private, Queen Elizabeth II said that his death left a huge void in her life. With coronavirus regulations still in effect, Prince Philip...
Thanks, Spencer. That's all the time we have on Talking Points for tonight. I'm Anthony Dabbundo.
And I'm Manny Martinez. Good night, everybody.